A very good evening to all our viewers today. Thank you for joining us. Today we have with us a very special guest all the way from Canada. She's an economist with MBA. She's worked 15 years in the space of sustainable development and presently she's working with Electra Battery Materials. Let us all welcome Miss Renata Cardoso.
Thank you
Hi
for
Renata.
having me.
We are really excited to learn about your journey and how you're doing what you're doing and what's the passion. So you've done an MBA and you're now leading as VP Sustainability and Low Carbon at Electra Batteries. And you've also worked with Whale Global Mining Company and had an entrepreneurial journey too. Now, how has your journey been and the changes that you've observed over the years?
Well, I can tell you it's definitely been great and exciting being a mining sustainability professional and at the same time being a woman in mining are both a big part of who I am as a person. As I learn a lot every day, I can also help shape the sector and how it should look like in the future. So it's been great. I believe the sector is transforming very quickly, especially more recently. I see investors and society are expecting the mining and metals industry to make consistent progress in terms of ESG commitments and performance. My job has always been to make sure companies walk the talk and eventually embed the ESG priorities into the core business strategy. My background is actually strategic planning, so it's been quite a journey to show how considerations to ESG aspects can add tangible value to all stakeholders.
That's very interesting. Now, you are a Brazilian and now in Canada, and we have known that Canada is very proactive in terms of climate change, especially the present regime. So, what are the mechanisms in place to contribute to global climate change goals?
Well, that's true. Canada, as one of the biggest economies in the world, the country understands it's crucial to not only take action, but also chase leadership on the topic, right? So it's a strategic move. On one hand, you are doing the right thing. And on the other hand, you meet the net zero goal. And at the same time, you continue competitive as a big economy over time. The way to do this is by supporting the clean energy and technology sectors that should grow. Canada has been taking action for a while. Let me talk a little bit about it. The country's target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is between 40 and 45% below 2005 levels until 2030, and to be net zero by 2050. There is also a net zero electricity goal for 2035, which is right around the corner. For that, Canada has been developing a comprehensive platform for investments covering several priorities. There's the Strategic Innovation Fund, the Low Carbon Economy Fund, Canada Growth Fund, the Hydrogen Strategy, among several other initiatives. The new federal government budget that was announced just 2 days ago adds a tax credit for clean tech manufacturing, clean electricity, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, among other things. The government announced more than $40 billion over the next 5 years to develop clean energy and technology in Canada. And this is expected to impact very positively the mining and processing of critical minerals that are needed not only for the electric vehicle market, but for the whole economy to grow in North America. And also, just to finish, all provinces in Canada have now some sort of carbon pricing mechanism, either carbon markets or taxes. The federal carbon price is now around 65 Canadian dollars, more like $50 per ton of greenhouse gases, with annual increases that will take it to 170 Canadian dollars per ton by 2030, which would be like, let's say, 125 US dollars. So yeah, a lot of work being done and a lot more to come, I see.
That's very interesting and extremely encouraging for you as a professional and also for the companies, you know. And I believe that even individuals are given incentives out there.
Yeah, we receive, families in Canada receive tax credits related to the carbon taxes. So every year there is some tax credits related to it.
Oh, that's really nice. Now, you've also worked with Vale mining, and mining is one of the most controversial thing when it comes to sustainability. So, tell us your experience about trying to make the mining industry sustainable.
Working towards mining sustainability is about transparency and performance. If you don't get to combine both, it's very difficult to achieve goals and society's expectations, really. And personally, you gotta be resilient because just like in other sectors, being a sustainability professional has to do with change, transformation, doing things differently, and it's about taking people and companies out of their comfort zones, really. Otherwise, things won't really happen. So it's a lot of work, and the best part is to see sustainable results starting to show. I was part of the first sustainability department with Vale when we wrote the company's first GRI-based sustainability report. And what could have been just a piece of communication actually changed the way the company understands operational performance. The sustainability KPIs we started to track every year and later every month became part of the regular management tools within the company. We made our GRI indicators to be part of the bonus scorecard for all employees, from the CEO to the frontline operators. So more into and more into the carbon management, which is the topic that speaks directly to my heart. We made it to the list of the most transparent companies in terms of reporting our impact, strategies, actions. I believe it all starts with understanding your impact and accepting you must be part of the solution as a private agent. You need to find ways to not only mitigate your impacts, but to promote the transition to a low carbon and more inclusive economy in a global level, right? Collaboration is also key. Sometimes you assume you know what the communities want, but it's really not the case until you develop dialogue and empathy. And of course, performance management is crucial. You can improve consistently and meet investors and other stakeholders' expectations until you know where you are.
I totally agree with you on these points. Now, my next question for you would be: mining or many, almost all the industries have carbon footprints, and you've been working on low carbon initiatives. Would you like to share more about what are the carbon markets and what is their functioning? Even internationally, how do we really take the carbon credits and how does it work altogether?
Sure, and this is so important, because it's growing very fast. Carbon markets are systems where carbon credits are generated when carbon dioxide or the equivalent amount of different greenhouse gas is reduced, captured, or avoided. So there are carbon markets based on compliance, such as the European cap and trade emissions trade system, where there is a cap on carbon emissions for high emitters, and they generate credits if they stay below that cap. There's also carbon markets that are based on voluntary initiatives, the voluntary markets. It means that a project to reduce or capture carbon in another country can generate and negotiate credits globally, and those credits can be used by some other company to offset their own emissions to meet specific goals or whatever. But it's important to say that if you want your goals to be recognized by SBTI, which is the Science Based Targets Initiative, and count as an initiative towards meeting the Paris Agreement, you may not be able to use carbon credits. There's still an issue with credibility. You need to be careful doing business in the voluntary markets. There's not yet much regulation around the voluntary market, and the acceptability of certain credits may be questioned, although there is progress in terms of standardization, for this market. Also, some parts of society may see the use of carbon credit as greenwashing, alleging the company should be doing the effort to reduce their own carbon emissions first, instead of just jumping into offsetting it with other initiatives across the globe. But this is very controversial, and I see a lot of progress. The fact is that global carbon market was valued recently at more than $700 billion and is expected to grow more than 20% per year, just because the demand for carbon credits is expected to increase due to the growing numbers of companies announcing net zero commitments.
So it's interesting. Though I have a different view of carbon market, and I feel it also increases greenwashing, as you earlier mentioned. And there have been situations wherein some of the very well-known carbon credit providers have been questioned, especially
Yeah.
based in Australia, have been questioned and they've been investigated. So, how do you see that we can ensure authenticity on that
Mhm.
and credibility?
Yeah, my advice to that would be we really need to understand which standards those carbon credits you intend to buy are associated to. If there are international global standards that are recognized, behind those carbon credits, then it can make sense for you. But everywhere I work with, and people that will be, listening to it will relate. Everywhere I work, I tell people, let's wait, let's do our homework first and reduce our carbon emissions from our operations with the technologies that are already out there and popping up. Let's test solutions, let's do our homework. And then when it comes to those emissions that you can't abate still, until new technologies come up, then we can think of offsetting.
I see. Now, again, speaking on the low carbon initiatives, how do you ensure that in a sustainable supply chain while you're making the batteries? And please share more about tracking the raw materials and ensuring circularity in this.
Well, it's a great question, because today traceability is essentially how companies are allowed to even be part of the electric vehicles market. Sustainable supply chains for us mean that the origin of our product and its parts come from ethical practices. This includes human rights, environmental stewardship, health and safety aspects, everything. There's guidance and due diligence standards for those things. And in Europe, there's also regulation coming into force this year on traceability and circularity. So several traceability tools are being developed as we speak to address the need to ensure all of that. The Global Battery Alliance, for instance, is working with a huge number of stakeholders to develop something that will eventually be regulated globally. When it comes to a low carbon supply chain, some factors should be considered. For instance, where you are located, where your facility is located. Electra's refinery is located in Ontario, and by that we get clean electricity, which is already a very good thing, a very important component of our carbon footprint. Another element is the nature of our process, which is hydrometallurgical, which is less energy and, by the way, less carbon intensive than the pyrometallurgical process. And another factor is where your suppliers and customers are located. So when you build this environment, you can mitigate emissions from transportation. We are developing a battery materials park where we are located in Northern Ontario, which means we want to attract battery producers, OEMs, so we can also expand the refinery to supply more than cobalt sulfate and battery recycling materials. And we rely also on the development of the North American supply chain for electric vehicles, which positions us on a much lower carbon intensity than other producers globally, just because we are local, right? In terms of circularity, just to finish, we are right now running a batteries recycling demonstration plant at our site. And the idea is to be able to set agreements with our customers. So in the future, we will provide the materials for their batteries and also recycle their batteries.
That's very interesting. And I hope that on the recycling and ensuring the circularity part, if this could be replicated on not only the Electra batteries, but also on many of the consumer durable products that we use in the day to day life, whose packaging is not sustainable.
Exactly.
And maybe what you guys are doing could be replicated by the other industries too. So Renata, you've been in this space for quite some time, and you would be knowing what are the knowledge gaps you've observed in the international markets on sustainable development. Would you like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. Gaps are more related, on my view, to the moment that we are living now. I know, we are living a transition, and that has to happen and requires a certain pace, and that implies a learning curve always. So everybody's now doing or trying to do a lot of things at the same time, identifying vulnerabilities, developing roadmaps to address those vulnerabilities, developing technologies to support the transition. Adding to that, there is the human behavior that I think perhaps is the most important piece. We know we need to change things, change the way we produce, but the level of effort that it requires is not clear for everybody. Sometimes organizations fail their goals not because of how ambitious they are, but of how the organization readiness to meet those goals is not there. Companies need to acknowledge that if ESG, sustainability, low carbon, energy transition, if those things are at the core of their strategy, they need to make the internal changes, in their structures to allow the transformation to happen. That's the way I see.
Uh, uh, Thank you for sharing on this. Now, having been in the industry and seeing so many transitions, what is the next transition that you would see, and what do you anticipate for the future? And message to our viewers.
Okay. I believe, in terms of trends, governments are becoming more and more clear on expectations, and they are doing their part by investing in the right direction and showing the right direction. They are announcing billions and billions for clean energy and technology. We heard about the Inflation Reduction Act in the US that directs nearly $400 billion in federal funding to develop clean energy. Europe also just announced $270 billion through the Green Deal Industrial Plan. And then Canada and other nations know they need to follow the lead because the energy transition is there and is happening. Everybody wants to take the opportunity. Probably, considering the low carbon nature of the electric vehicles market, I see another trend. And, considering the global political tensions happening right now, and the trend is localization of the supply chains. We talk a lot about the North American supply chain, the European supply chain. It doesn't mean at all that everybody's giving up on globalization, but it means that I think countries and regions understand now that they need to secure what is critical for the nation's development, considering the energy transition and climate change goals. And yeah, you mentioned a message.
Message to our viewers.
Okay, so first of all, of course, thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure to be here. And I would say to continue to work towards ESG goals to make the global energy transition happen, this will require a lot of collaboration cross sector and between private and public sector, plus agencies, plus networks such as you. And we need to develop the standards, the best practices, the technologies, and the behaviors that we will need. A lot has been done, but of course, we know there's still a lot of work to be done. So this is for sure. It's going to be an incredible ride. We'll get there, I believe. And I also believe we are very lucky to be alive in these exciting times. And thank you again.
Thank you so very much. We have a comment from Alice Shibale thanking us, and thank you from us and from all our viewers for sharing your knowledge and your time and wisdom with us. It has been wonderful talking to you and a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.